G'day, everyone. G'day, Deanna.
Hi, Shane.
Well, we've got a really special guest today in the form of Alexis George, who is the CEO of AMP. Within AMP, she's known as Lex. So welcome, Lex.
Thank you very much. Great honour to be here. First time I've been allowed on in 5 years. So I know it's going to be hard to get a word in edgeways, but I'm a bit of a professional talker too,
So you'll talk over me. Deanna says I talk too much. So
between Deanna and I, I'm sure we can have a good go today.
I'm sure we will. So let's start with your coming to AMP. At that point in time, AMP was in a bit of a tough spot after a few problems. And you took the risk of moving from ANZ. I think at the time you were a deputy CEO. To me, it was like jumping out of not just the frying pan, it was jumping out of something which was doing really well into something which is really struggling in the form of AMP. And what motivated you to do that? Why did you come to AMP? You could have just taken the safe road and stayed at ANZ.
Yeah, I mean, I loved ANZ, by the way, but after we sold the businesses there, I got a little bored. I mean, I just absolutely love being the CEO and a leader, and you realise how much influence you can actually have. And so when this opportunity came along, honestly, it was just too hard to resist. And I felt sad about what had happened to AMP, even though it was a competitor. I actually genuinely felt sad. And I thought, I probably can't do much of a worse job, so why don't I have a go at that? And you said jumping into the fire. I remember at the time, and I've told this story a number of times, but I'll never forget, my daughter said to me, my goodness, Mum, they used to call it the glass ceiling. Now they call it the glass cliff, and I think you're hanging off by your fingernails.
Yeah.
But I never regretted it.
Yeah. And how have you found the experience today? Because initially it would have been really rough at that point in time. The share price, I think, was still very weak. There was a question mark as to whether AMP would even survive.
Yeah, it was tough. Those first couple of years were hard work, I've got to say. And I think what for me, when I walked in the door, was the fact that you read all this media, but I never experienced that here.
Yeah.
I experienced people that really wanted to do a good job, cared about the customer, really cared about the brand. I'm sure there was elements that didn't, but I didn't experience that. And so that was such a positive introduction. Remember, it was COVID, so I didn't meet anyone physically for about 6 months. That was the hardest thing for me. But, you just put your head down, figure out what you've got to do immediately, what can wait. And I feel that's what we did, and I feel very proud of where we're at now. And hopefully our people feel proud of coming to work here now as well.
I think they do.
It's funny, when you said that before about the glass cliff, there have been a few instances in the past few years where people say a woman's been appointed into the role of a man at a time that the business has gone downhill, taken down by a male leader before. Some examples have been like that come to mind for me is Australia Post, for example, where Christine Holgate got put into the role, but then she transforms a business, but then ultimately leaves because the shareholders don't like it or they've done something bad. What do you sort of make of that?
Yeah, it's nearly International Women's Day, right? So it's an interesting question. I wish this wasn't true, I still think it's harder to be a woman in leadership. And I think you've got to be resilient, you've got to have a strong sense of self, and you've got to ask for help and take it. And I hope that changes.
But why do you think it's harder?
I think there's this perception that women can't make the hard decisions. And I've been told that originally by some of the shareholders. Are you going to be able to make the hard decisions? Well, I have been the deputy CEO of ANZ. I've made a few hard decisions in my life. But it's interesting that often keeps coming up. Can you make the tough decisions? So I think that's an element of it. And look, we still live in a world where we're in the minority at the top level. So it's what's normal for most people. And I don't know about you, but even though I am a woman, I still sometimes have these biases in my head that come out. I'm like, where on earth did that come from, right? I think I really try to support women. So I just think it's still today a little tougher, and I am disappointed to see that the numbers are going down again in the ASX 300, not up.
Because the target is 40% at a board level.
Yeah.
And I think we're around that.
Don't worry about us, Shane. We're well okay.
AMP is. But I get the impression that it's sort of got there and it's not going up any further.
No, I think that's right. In fact, I think at the top levels it's going backwards again now, which is, for me, is really disappointing.
But it seems like there's a bit of a backlash. I remember we were having a conversation about a year ago. Donald Trump had taken over in the US and was acting against almost companies that had DEI. And you said something jokingly, well, what do we say? And and I remember thinking after, I didn't have a good answer at the time, I remember thinking, well, we do the right thing. Because I kind of think DEI, you can make arguments that in some ways it went too far or too quickly, too fast. But I kind of think a lot of it is just doing the right thing. DEI
I think
is
that's
about
really
doing the right
easy
thing.
to say. I feel quite passionately about this because people always say, oh, it's the best person for the job. Oh, that's really interesting. So how is the best person for the job 80% of the time a man? I can't find, I don't know. So, yeah, of course it has to be the best person for the job, but I think, we have to broaden our horizons a little bit and be a bit more encouraging.
Mm. But how do you see the environment now? It seems as like there was a lot of pressure on to go down the DEI path, and there was evidence that diversity would lead to better corporate performance. You've got more people, different voices around the table and so on. Whereas you got this backlash occurring around the world, particularly in the US. And so consequently, even in Australia, don't hear about it as much.
No, I think that's true, although I'd say we're probably a little more committed to the 40-40-20, so diversity in all its forms, and I hope we continue to do that. But certainly there is a backlash. I probably wouldn't argue it went too far, but that you'll probably say, well, I'd expect that of you, because I think it is really important. I think diversity does make it for a better workplace, does make for better decision making, because we all come to the table with biases. We'll say we don't, but we do. So I hope we continue on that road. And I think as it is coming up to International Women's Day, look, for me, I hate the fact that we still have to have an International Women's Day, but we do. So,
personally, I don't think it went too far. I worry, though, that it went that like there's an argument in America that it sort of led to the rise of the manosphere and all those sorts of things. And so as you go down the path of DEI, you've also got to bring along everyone else with you.
Totally agree, Shane.
There's an argument there that it went so far that it led to a backlash, which then pulls the whole thing back again. Like you're seeing in America, you get a snapback, and that leads to years of progress ends up being reversed again, potentially.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree, and I'm not for supporting groups of women who get together and don't talk about solutions but talk about problems. I think we have to make this a broader communication, and we have to, in the new generations, support men to take parental leave, and not make that an oddity, and bring them into the discussion, because I think I've spoken about the fact before, but my husband was so good in supporting my career, and he was the main person at home for most of it, and I saw how he had to deal with things there as well. So I think it can't be a either or. It's got to be everyone, and it's got to be opportunities for everyone to take participation in the workforce and at home to be with children if they so choose to have children.
Yeah. I think that's right.
It's interesting because I actually read this book recently about how we've sort of left the boys behind, going back to your point that we've brought the women up, women in STEM, women in finance, all these women in wealth things.
Women in economics.
That's right. I'm part of the committee. But we've sort of forgotten about the men, or the boys haven't been raised up as much. So their educational results, for example, in the US and Australia are going backwards. And the way that we teach boys in the classroom is not conducive to the types of behaviours that they display. So I think that there probably, in the longer term, is work to be done to try and solve some of these issues, because maybe the boys have been forgotten about a little bit and has led to some of these development problems, particularly in younger boys.
Oh my goodness, that's a big question. I mean, I think there's a lot of things happening in a world that I didn't grow up with. Social media impacts what's right, what's wrong, what's real, what's not. the perfect lives that apparently everyone leads. I don't lead that perfect life, I can tell you. So I don't know, I think there's a lot of changes happening societally. And I think, well, I'm all for flexibility in working, and I think it's a great thing for everyone. It does worry me sometimes as women still carry more of the home burden. Will presenteeism start to creep back in? So I think there's some new phenomena, and I would never want the flexibility people have in working now. I think it's great, but I wonder about the consequences down the road for both men and women for that matter.
Yeah, I find it a difficult issue. I mean, if you look at America, I mean, I've seen stats which show the rate of suicide amongst young men is sort of rising. And so I can see where Diana's coming from on that front. But I often have this, because I'm in this Finity. Finity is an organisation that publishes a women's index and tracks women's progress through time. And I often like to say that it's not just about pushing women ahead and making women more like men. You've also got to make men a bit more like women.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because I often get the impression that women have a greater sense of balance than men do. Men are the ones who...
My husband would beg to differ on that with me.
Maybe I may be wrong on that one. But you want to get balance on both sides.
I totally agree. I mean, what do we want society to be? We want it all to uplift it.
Yeah.
For me, it's not about women or men. And you and I were talking about that before, and I suppose that worries me about society today. And, you know, I said I didn't come from any money. I had to put myself through university. I could build my own wealth. I hope that somehow we can get to that the next generations can work hard and build their own wealth too. Yeah. It's much more difficult.
So do you worry about the younger groups at the moment being able to build their wealth?
I do a lot. I really do. And I feel very lucky and very fortunate to be where I am, and I feel like I've had a great career. I've got a great family. I have built my own wealth, and so I'm comfortable. But I think it's a lot harder these days. You know, it is just a lot harder, and I think we're talking really seriously now, but I think as a nation we've got some things to face into. And I know I read all of your material diligently, don't agree with everything, but even recently I think I wrote you a note, Shane, saying that was a great paper. I think it was about productivity and housing. It
was one of those.
They're all great, I know, but that one was particularly, for me, thoughtful.
I appreciate that. I have this dilemma in my own mind, because I consider myself, a lot of economists of my generation grew up with Hawke and Keating and Thatcher and Reagan. And at the time we thought they were fantastic because they opened economies up and deregulated. But at the same time in Australia we had a good focus under Hawke and Keating on a social safety net. But then there's an argument that it all went too far and led to rising inequality, and that's now leading to this populist backlash, which could, for a while anyway, take us a long way from free market economics. So in the back of my mind, I kind of think, well, free market economics is the way to go unless there's some market failure or inequity where government should intervene. But by the same token, I'm also conscious that ideally we need to do something about rising inequality. But
I fear we're on the same page here. So.
But I don't want to go down the populist path of egregious, higher tax rates on the wealthy, or doing things that discourage people. Like in California now, they're having a debate about a wealth tax. And of course, all these billionaires are thinking, well, we'll just relocate to Florida or Texas and you end up with a lower tax base. Yeah. So I don't think that's the solution. But I kind of think, we should be thinking about these things more deeply. Like personally, I kind of think that typical economists here, well, an inheritance tax might be a better way to go because it doesn't dissuade people in the here and now.
So you can say that because you're our chief economist.
I can, but a lot of people hate the idea of an inheritance tax.
Yeah, that's a really interesting discussion. I don't disagree with you about your commentary, and I think I would rather see the rising tide of everyone. I think we're going to have to face into some of the productivity issues that we're facing in this country and what that's going to mean longer term, because ultimately that leads to a rising tide.
That's right.
But in Australia, we have such a good superannuation system that the average retiree at the moment actually feels pretty good, don't they?
Well, yeah, because the average retiree probably has some form of housing as well. So housing and a nice super balance. They should feel good, that's for sure. And we know that the amount of money moving into that next phase of the system over the next 20 years is huge. And I think the compulsory super will actually create some wealth for our next generation, so it's good. But you know as well as I do, as a country, we're obsessed with housing. We seem to go to great lengths to buy a house, and we haven't solved that problem yet. Like, it is a dream too far away for many people today.
Mm. But what do you think is the solution?
Oh, my goodness.
Like at the moment, as we're talking.
Clearly there's supply issues, right?
Yeah,
I don't think you need to be an economist to understand that there's supply problems we've got to deal with. That's a big problem. But I do think we have to deal with some of the productivity issues that we're facing. Yeah. You know, when you've got real wage reduction, that's not good for a lot of people in the country. I mean, that's where we are and have been for a while, right?
I mean, the productivity thing depresses me because in the aftermath of Hawke and Keating and then Howard and Costello, I think productivity was over 2% at one stage, which means that your living standard can easily rise.
Absolutely.
You can get a real wage rise of 2% a year. And that may not sound a lot in any one year, but if you compound over say 10 years, you know, you're substantially better off. And that was what we were getting the benefit of in Australia. In recent times, it's been zero or something over the last 10 years. And then we get these little pickups and then it disappears again. But I think that's a major, major problem, the fact that we're not seriously debating it. Well, we're starting to. It's good to see that round table.
I think that's topic of conversation.
Topic of conversation, but it often then diverges down to, well, we've got these pressures on the budget and therefore we need to find more ways to raise taxes, which I personally think will just lead to a dead end.
At a firm level, how do you think about the productivity of a company like AMP? Like, is it even a metric that we can look at?
It's a really good question because we're ultimately a service company, right? We don't make tables or chairs. I can sit here and say I can measure the number of calls our contact centre people take, how long they spend on that call, but I don't think that's a true reflection of productivity in a company like ours. At the end of the day, it's how much revenue can you derive from the assets you've got here. And I'd love to see us do more and more and more, and I'd love to see our share price higher. I know we're in a lot better state than we were when I walked in the door in terms of that kind of productivity. I think we're in an interesting world, though, with the emergence of AI. And, I've been talking to a lot of our shareholders over the last couple of weeks, and they're all asking me, well, like, what is it? Like, what's going to happen? I don't know the answer to that, right? I have been an absolute proponent of getting on board with AI because I fundamentally believed it was going to change things a couple of years ago. And I know some of the rest of the executive team looked at me like, oh, don't be an idiot. Whereas now, that's probably not the case. But I do think one thing we've got to do is we have to understand how to utilise it as humans at a minimum. And I'd rather see augmented humans than replaced humans. And I know if we don't embrace it, we'll be replaced humans. And that's what I want people here to understand. And I think they do now because we've got 95% of people using it on a daily basis.
When you were thinking about AI at AMP, was there ever this consideration like we can replace X% of the workforce and use a machine to do this instead? I mean, there have been some recent announcements from CBA that they're replacing 300 of their staff and they're going to retrain and use AI to do some of these processes.
And it's okay to ask that question. Like, I've had our new starters ask me that question straight up, and I love the fact that they feel brave enough to ask me that question because it would be on the tip of my tongue if I was embarking on a new job. I feel my responsibility as a CEO, firstly, is to democratise the use of AI. So everybody in the place we work has an opportunity to use it. I can lead the horse to water. If they choose not to use it at the end of the day, even though training's available, tools are available, I can't fix that. There's a small population that will never use it, and that's okay. But I do feel it's a responsibility to train them. I think the other thing is to think that the whole workforce will stay the same in 5 years' time as today. It's just not true. So there's no point in lying about it. But I would like to see the jobs evolve, not be replaced. And as I've said to some of our people, who today take calls, wouldn't it be better if we could be reaching out to customers rather than having to wait for them to call us when we have a problem? So I think we've got those opportunities. And the other thing for us, and I think for a lot of companies, we've used partners in a lot of situations to do things for us. So I feel my responsibility is to our people, and that's the partner's problem to look after their people. So educating and giving our people the tools will mean that we can augment them, they can be better, and will there be some reductions in the supply chain? Potentially, but hopefully not here to any significance.
I think historically, whenever a new technology comes along, there's distrust of it, or the Luddites, smashing the machines. And some would say, well, they were right to smash the machines because the Luddites who were weavers or whatever, they did lose their jobs. Their jobs were wiped out, but then lots of other jobs were created along the way. And I know we can create these sort of dystopian fantasies about what AI will do. And there was one on the weekend from a US research house, I think called Citrini, or a blogger or researcher or something. And you kind of think, well, okay, that could happen. Just like in 1968, that Space Odyssey film where, was it Hal, the
You're better at this than me, Shane.
Locked
I'm stuck in reality TV.
Locked the Austrian. I think it was just sort of one of those things that you kind of remember when you see that film, and the astronaut was locked out in space because Hal, the computer, closed the doors and took over. And so you can have those fears, but at the end of the day, technology has had a positive effect. It's freed people up from doing a lot of drudgery and ultimately complemented their jobs.
And made us healthier and everything else as well. I like to be on the optimist side. That is, I try to still have faith in the human race that we won't allow some of those things to happen. So I'm kind of optimistic about the use of it, but the genie's out of the bottle. So there's no stopping it. You may as well try and use it for good. Yeah, it's happening, and hope as a society that we'll constrain some of those more evil facets that we hear about today.
Back to that thing about the numbers, there's a few months ago, at some point last year, I think several of the banks that announced layoffs due to AI, and I think at one stage there you got up to about 4,000 people, and that sounds quite negative. But typically in Australia, we create 20,000 jobs a month, and so
have been doing so for
years. And I was also conscious 25 years ago when the internet came along, everyone was worried about losing their jobs. And then a whole bunch of jobs came along which no one had ever dreamt about beforehand. Like we did.
I think my daughter gave me a really good piece of advice when I was stressing about the university degree, that she moved from commerce, which for me was safe and do economics or whatever. And then she decided she hated it and moved into media and international relations. And I was so stressed.
Yeah.
And now she's running technology teams and she's like, Mum, just forget about it. We have to adapt. I'm going to have 8 different careers in my lifetime. So stop stressing that it has to be like this. And I think that's what it's about, adapting, right? Just adapting. New jobs will be created with new skills. And I do think it's interesting now that, the traditional road that you and I particularly went through, Shane, university, you went to school, no thought of ever changing your university degree once you started, and then naturally went off to, some commercial enterprise. I mean, I think it's great that doesn't exist now and there's different pathways to get where you want. So there's some good things out of all of this.
Because naturally when you hear that someone's studying media studies, you think, oh, why would they do that? Because it's an industry which is in decline. But that's traditional media. New media is coming along, and even if she didn't go into whatever she's doing now, she might have gone into
She was in digital media, actually.
But then you go on to new media and digital media, and there's a whole new universe there. So,
who ever thought that, you'd be an economic influencer when you started your career?
Or a TikToker.
Oh, exactly.
TikTok, no, I didn't consider that. When they started doing it, I thought, oh, what are we doing this for? Who's going to be watching these videos?
Did you hate it? Whereas I thought, this is fantastic.
He was so dubious.
Oh, I was dubious because they think I'm like an Asian father who that they've done something fantastic, and I say, oh, that's very good.
No, every time, there's context here. Every time like we do something good or there's good feedback, Shane just replies, okay, or like thumbs up, like typical, dad response, like whatever.
Well, you've dragged him there. Look at him now. You'll have him dancing soon. I've seen him wear silly hats.
We almost did on one. I think the benefit what I like of it is that you can communicate basic economics in a simpler medium.
And attract a different audience to people like me, Shane.
That's right.
I mean it seriously. It's the education that I think Australians need. And it was really weird to me. I did something on TikTok on retirement. I can't even remember what it was. And then one of my colleagues' kids go, I saw Alexis on TikTok talking about retirement.
Yeah.
And you think, my goodness, I didn't think that was it. But that's the audience we need to reach, right?
That's right.
And you also want to make sure that people who are watching TikToks are actually getting good information, because there's a lot of crap out there too.
Yes.
So you want to sort of educate them the right way.
I think, and that fascinates me, because, when people say, oh, people don't get advice anymore, blah, 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 and everyone knows professional advice can change your life, and I would definitely say that. But they are getting advice, and it's to your point, from not credible people or firms on Facebook. I know that's for older people, Deanna, or TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. So they're getting it, but it's just not reputable. So I think it's great that you're all out there doing
it's been
what
fun.
you do.
It's been fun. I think the other aspect of it is that you and I were brought up in an environment where if we do videos, they all be very scripted and controlled. But then you find no one really wants to watch some of them.
Because they're boring.
Because they're so boring. Whereas these ones, they're unscripted and jump around and there's little captions and they catch people's attention. So,
I think it's great. I
mean, I do worry, like my kids, there's like this new term called brain rot. It's like these short form videos.
Yeah.
And I don't allow YouTube at my house, but when they go to the grandparents, they're just on YouTube for like 2 hours and they come out and their eyes are like, they can't even see straight, because this content is called brain rot. So I do worry sometimes that people who are consuming the very short form videos, the longer form I think is different, like podcasts, simplifying investing, or YouTube type of videos where a longer form you're getting more information, it's okay, but some of the shorter form ones can be problematic.
I do worry about my own brain at night, because often to turn off, I'll go up and watch Jimmy Kimmel. Again, I think I'm too left, but I'm watching Jimmy Kimmel, and then it goes on to Stephen Colbert and then Seth Meyers, and then the whole night's gone.
Well, you're watching something a bit more highbrow than I'm watching. I'm watching maths. I
was about to say, so what does Lex do to relax at night?
I do watch reality TV.
So maths is...
I know, you probably call it brain rot, but I find people fascinating. And I find people who want to go on shows like that fascinating as well.
Yeah, why would they do that? A few years ago, I got obsessed with The Bachelor. You remember that?
I love The Bachelor.
The one where
Did you watch The Golden Bachelor?
No, I didn't see that.
I didn't even know it was on.
Yeah, that was more mature.
Oh, right. Oh, for older people. My generation.
Not quite.
No, Bachelor, the one with the guy who was the astrophysicist.
Matt.
No, was it Matt? Could have been Matt. And I thought that was fantastic. Then I watched it for a few seasons more. And then I think I began to get a bit tired of it for some reason. But I can understand why people do watch it, because it's a nice escape.
And it is an escape, and it doesn't require a lot of energy to watch it.
Yeah.
And you can go to sleep really easily after that.
That's right. But anyway.
Back to more serious things.
Just on financial advice, what would you advise young people today? You're coming out of university, you're just starting your career. What would be, I guess, 3 or 4 things that you would advise them to do?
I know you'd say compound interest, but I've discovered a lot of people don't understand what compound interest is actually.
It's magic.
It is magic.
We should do another video on compound interest.
You should. It's really magic. I kind of think of, because we all have to contribute to our super plan, whether you like it or not. As soon as you start working, you're contributing, right? And I've got I've had kids go through that, and the first time they view it as a tax, and then they don't want to know about it. Like, don't look at it.
My kids would say that. Why do we have to do this? Why is the government forcing us to do this?
And I think it's really fascinating. So then it's scary for most people, right? Finances are scary for most people. I've also realised that. And I kind of started to think about it the other day, is probably not for you two, but when you come back from holidays, it's like you have to get on that weight scale. You really don't want to, but it's going to be better for you when you see the damage that has just been done over the last 2 months. But then once you get on it and you actually have a plan to deal with it, you feel better. And I feel like that sometimes with finances, like, because people are scared, they just don't do anything. And I think even just looking at your balance, just engaging simply like that is a first step for me. And I always say to people, just take the first step. And if you put in a cent now, it's worth, with you doing nothing, 10 cents, in a few years' time, especially with the markets the way they've been. So I really think we just got to encourage people to engage. There's so many good tools out there now. And $1 today is going to make a hell of a difference to your retirement, and you'll never notice $1 today. But how to get that across, I don't know. You should do something more on compound interest, because it is magic.
Yeah. There was this guy, Don Stammer, and he worked for a stockbroker, Bain, I think at the time, then it moved on to Deutsche. And he would come in, and regularly his comments were, make the most of compound interest and don't get thrown off by the cycle, because the cycle, you go up and down, the share market falls 50% in the tech wreck and the GFC, and you think, shock horror, why do I want to be here? But then if you look at compound interest, it just sails through that over time, and all those events like the 87 crash in MICA. Like 3 years into my career, the share market halved in value in Australia. And I might have been thinking at the time, oh, geez, I should go into my super and switch it to the safe option.
Yeah. Fortunately,
I couldn't do it. But if we would have done it, I would have missed out on all those gains that subsequently occurred, and involved buying shares every fortnight via my pay packet at 50% discount.
And there's not many of us that are smarter than the market, but putting an extra $1 in a day, as you said, outweighs the market.
Yeah.
But I can see Deanna's going, look.
What do you mean?
I know.
She's probably
Let me in, Shane. Let me say something, Shane.
I had a thought actually, and then it left. I can't remember because he kept talking. Should have written it down.
You should have. I'll say another one, though. I just thought of another one. And this is the other. A lot of people these days think, okay, well, maybe I can do better than the market, or I can buy Bitcoin or this or that or something, and it's done fantastically. Why haven't you done that?
Got one of those kids sits on the kitchen table trading. Like, don't you want to get involved? No.
But they don't realise the difficulty until, like, I was in the same camp thinking this is what I should do. And then you realise this is actually really, really hard to try and beat the market consistently.
What, you were trying to beat the market?
Well, I thought you could.
So what did you do?
Well, I'd try and pick shares.
Oh, okay.
But then I'd do no better.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd have great wins and then it would all fall apart again and then you'd be behind. But the amount of effort involved just convinced me I'm just better off with the...
Well, there's experts. I've never had illusions about that. I kind of think better to put it with a professional.
Yeah.
I remembered my thought now. It was that education piece, because when we've been building our Econosites following, it is hard to get people engaged to something like finance or super, which isn't really sexy. Like no one wants to talk about it.
Well,
no
I
one
find
really
it
cares.
really sexy actually, but most people don't.
I agree. But so we have trying to broaden our reach and educate people, but it is hard to get people engaged because we're engaging with people who already have a bit of an interest, but who we really want to engage with is people who don't know where their super is, maybe have 5 different super accounts, don't even know what super is, don't know what shares are. And that's sort of the hope that we can educate more and more people who don't know anything about this stuff and who haven't grown up around it.
I totally agree, because if it's not talked about in the kitchen table, I mean, it is hard, right? It is actually quite daunting. And our system, you've got to, do you take growth assets? Do I take not growth assets?
And what does that mean?
What does it mean?
The average person in the street probably wouldn't even know. Like, I remember going into a graduate job interview at Goldman Sachs. My parents did not invest in shares, probably besides their super, didn't trust the share market because they were from the Soviet Union. like wouldn't put any money into anything probably besides property. So we never spoke about shares at all when I was growing up. I went into this interview for an investment banking role. Didn't know what investment banking was, but whatever, I applied for anything I could. I had pretty good marks. And, you know, these big investment banking dudes were like to me, so what do you invest in? And I said, invest? I don't know. I like economics. They're like, well, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know, actually. I just applied for any job. But so if you don't have that education at home, it's really hard to sort of get interested in it. And I only became interested in it when actually I started AMP.
Really?
Yep. I was always, I loved economics, but I was never into investing apart from the last 10 years. Yeah.
But that's why I love what you're doing, because it's accessible. And I do love that we've got social media and technologies now, that it's accessible in your home, because it's embarrassing to ask the dumb questions, right? And I think sometimes you talk about the questions that people are too embarrassed to ask, like compound interest. Like, what is it? Like, it rolls off our tongue, like everyone should understand what it is. But I like that fact. And, you know, I think it's great that we've now got these tools where you can sit there and take yourself through a journey of digital advice, and you can look at people like me do this or people like me do that. Because how on earth do you know if you want to be in growth or balanced or conservative or whatever? So I think making it more accessible is really important, because for a lot of the next generation, it'll be the biggest asset they'll have. It's going to be a lot of money if you start at 16 contributing 12% of whatever earnings you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult. I must admit my super's grown to levels that I never imagined it.
We don't want to know what your level of super is.
No, I won't tell you the
You're
level,
going to be hitting those Chalmers taxes that are coming through next year.
No, but
That'll be very difficult for us to calculate.
when you start putting the money in, it sounds so low, and then compounding grows it so rapidly over time, because you might be getting a similar return, like 10% or 8%, 9%, 12%, whatever it is. But that once you've start to grow the balance, it builds on itself. That's what compounding is.
Yeah. I think people will be very happy that you're going to have a comfortable retirement.
There's also a huge element of luck.
But there were, of course.
But you have seen many cycles, to be fair.
I have seen many cycles.
Do you really think it's luck or longevity?
I think it's both, because Shane's also had a career where he's been paid well.
Yeah,
he's had large pay rises and been through a period where they've had large bonuses, and that's not the norm for someone on an average income in Australia. But you have seen cycles as well throughout that time where the share market's crashed by 50% or so.
Well, there's been
then recovered.
3 or 4, but I won't go through the whole history of it.
No.
We don't need to know the history.
I mean, you might say there was an element of luck in there, because when I started in markets in 1984...
You also had no time out of the workforce.
Yeah. I was a hard worker.
Yeah, okay. You had support at home, look after your family.
I did, yeah. But well, just on that, I was one of the first at AMP to regularly start working at home on a Monday.
Oh.
So this started when
Trendsetter.
when my son was born.
You know our rules are you have to work on a Monday or Friday in the office.
That was a Monday. No, I always work on Monday or Friday. But I because you could get parental leave for males, you'd get 6 weeks, and then the first 5 days you could be at home, but you had to be primary carer after that. So I would do every Monday when my wife went back to work, and over time that evolved into working at home on a Monday.
Wow, you were a trendsetter.
And this was in the 2000s. And then eventually the HR, the people in culture, discovered me, and I became a poster child for a male working at home and then dropping the kids off at school and picking them up.
I did not know that. Did you know that?
Yeah, he tells me all the time.
I did have an element of luck that in the early 80s, because of the economic reforms at the time, it set off a long-term period of strong performance from investment markets.
Yeah.
So we went from high interest rates to low interest rates, high inflation to low inflation, and that helped, I guess, supercharge investment.
It does
return.
help that we've been contributing for
40
an
years.
awful long time.
In my case, 42 years.
But also at a lower
helps.
rate of income over that time. Like now the super guarantee is 12%.
Yeah, we started
If
off
you're a
at
parent,
3
yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the luck I had was I joined AMP, and AMP was
You
already...
always got super. I
always
didn't
had
get
super.
super for my first whatever number of years.
Because AMP believed in it. But then Keating came along and said, rightfully, Hawke and Keating, and said, well, we need to spread this and make it available to everyone, which I think is one of the best reforms
I do too.
Australia did.
Do you think it's going to go up again, the super guarantee?
I don't think it'll be going up in my contributing years.
So I think that if
I don't think that's on the agenda politically at this point in time. I think, a lot of people struggling out there, let's be honest. There's a cost of living problem, real wages not escalating at the time, so I don't think that's on the agenda.
We better wrap up soon. I think getting the nod from Marcel over there. But
we could talk for hours on this. We've covered so many topics today. Child raising, kitchen table conversations, state of the economy.
Maths. The Bachelor.
Oh, yeah, The Bachelor.
So, Lex, you actually announced a few weeks ago that you were stepping down as the CEO. So how much longer do you have left at AMP?
Well, I finish up at the end of March, so I've got me in two minds. I'm a little bit excited, but I'm absolutely petrified as well, because for 30-odd years someone's handed me my diary every week and go, this is what you're doing for the next 5 days, and then suddenly I'm going to wake up and But I'm really looking forward to the next chapter, but I can assure you I will be cheering for AMP from the sidelines and cheering for you, and I'll be a shareholder, so I'll be probably a noisy one.
Well, thanks very much for always supporting our team and for coming onto the podcast today. Wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Lex. You've done great for AMP.
Thank you.